Russell Vought is an insane person who was just confirmed to be the next director of Office and Management and Budget. And for those of you that don't know, he is actually the main architect of Project 2025. So I thought it might be a good time to check to see how much of Donald Trump's agenda is actually just drawn straight out of Project 2025. Now, as most of you probably know, this was a set of policy ideas coming from the very right-leaning Heritage Foundation, and it was drawn up to be used in the next conservative administration. And to the Dems' credit, they actually made Project 2025 very unpopular with the American people in the run-up to the election. So much so that Donald Trump actually had to start distancing himself from it, even though many of the authors of the document were in Trump's inner circle. So as a reminder, here's Donald Trump trying to disavow Project 2025, saying he has no idea what it is, and he has nothing to do with it. If you do appreciate the work I do, please do remember to subscribe.
I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it.
Project 2025 is not affiliated with the Trump campaign.
I don't know what the hell it is. It's Project 25. He's involved in Project, and then they read some of the things, and they are extreme. I mean, they're seriously extreme. But I don't know anything about it. I don't want to know anything about it.
So how are you going to say Project 2025 is very, very extreme, but then go on to say that you haven't read it, you don't know anything about it, has nothing to do with you? These two things do not compute. Now, obviously, Donald Trump was very concerned about distancing himself from Project 2025 because I would describe it as an authoritarian playbook. It is very extreme. And during this first couple of weeks of the Trump administration, things have looked pretty extreme, and they seem to parallel quite closely with Project 2025. So let's go ahead and take a look at this first area of border policy. How much of the border policy that Trump has implemented is in alignment with Project 2025?
On border security and defense, Project 2025 is largely in line with Trump's broad moves to restrict immigration and tighten security on the southern border, with both the president and Project 2025 advocating increasing detention facilities for undocumented migrants, taking steps that would give local law enforcement more jurisdiction over identifying undocumented migrants, rescinding Biden-era immigration policies, restricting undocumented immigrants' abilities to receive public funds, and restricting parole programs for migrants, among other moves.
So border policy, check. Not only is Trump reversing many of the Biden-era policies, but he is also moving 30,000 undocumented immigrants to Guantanamo Bay. What? He's also revoked the temporary protected status of 600,000 Venezuelans, even though he vowed not to go after legal immigrants. It's not very surprising. Project 2025 is a very ultra-nationalist outlook on what the federal government should be, so it's not very surprising at all that these border policies are so in alignment with the very conservative set of ideas. Let's go ahead and move on to energy policy. As many of you know, green energy is a common boogeyman of conservatives.
Trump declared a, quote, national energy emergency and broadly took action against efforts on renewable energy like the Biden administration's pro-electric vehicle policies and federal wind energy projects, saying the U.S. should instead increase energy production through oil and gas drilling. After Project 2025 similarly claimed the U.S., quote, energy crisis is caused by extreme green policies and said the next president, quote, must be committed to unleashing all of America's energy resources.
Now, this is just absolutely idiotic. There was more oil drilling under the Biden administration than there ever has been in human history. And to go after green energy, this one really feels like, we're going to stick it to you. We're going to own the libs. Because there's really no good reason to oppose renewable energy. These people are just childish morons who want to go after something because they brand it with liberal. Absolutely pathetic, but check. Energy policy. Let's go ahead and move on to military and how it aligns with Project 2025.
Military policies. Trump reinstated members of the military who were discharged for not complying with its COVID-19 vaccine mandate as Project 2025 urged, and also signed an order ending DEI programs in the military after Project 2025 called for the military to, quote, eliminate Marxist indoctrination and divisive critical race theory programs and abolish newly established diversity, equity, and inclusion offices and staff.
Okay, military, check. DEI, check. The Trump administration has been aggressive in pursuing anything that even resembles DEI. These clowns have no idea what DEI is, diversity, equity, inclusion. They just use it as another form of racism and try to use it to degrade anybody who might be seeking those end goals. So I think these people are pathetic, but again, another thing straight out of Project 2025. And what is really grotesque about all this, they want to end Marxist indoctrination. What the hell does that even mean? How many Marxists could these people identify in this country? What, are they just going to say all liberals are Marxists? Pathetic, pathetic, pathetic. Let's go ahead and move on to civil servants. This is a huge deal, especially since we are seeing attacks like the buyouts. We're seeing people just getting laid off. I mean, it's been a disaster for civil servants.
And on career civil servants. Project 2025 strongly advocates for replacing career civil servants with political appointees dedicated to the president's agenda. And Trump has taken multiple steps towards that goal already, including re-implementing a Schedule F order that makes it easier to fire career officials, imposing a hiring freeze for career civil servants, both of which Project 2025 suggested, and offering buyouts to millions of government employees. For more on this...
So civil servants, check. Now Russell Vought, the main architect of Project 2025, he was on camera saying that he wants to put civil servants into trauma. These people are evil, okay? People like Russell Vought are clowns. This is a fascist takeover of our government, but they just call it a set of conservative policy ideas. These are far, far from conservative or just conservative or like Reagan conservative. This is much, much further than that. And so, as we can see here, there are many alignments in the Trump administration as far as implementing this very conservative agenda. And I think I read in the first week, 2/3 of the executive orders, I think, were drafted straight out of Project 2025, or very closely resembled what was written in Project 2025. So there is no way that any reasonable person could say that Project 2025 is not involved or being implemented in the Trump administration. Let's go ahead and move on to USAID, because USAID has been under attack the last few days with Elon Musk raiding the Treasury, trying to shut it down unilaterally. And this is something that came directly out of Project 2025.
Chapter 9 of the document is all about the Agency for International Development, USAID, as we're all saying these days, now closed to employees and brought under Secretary of State Marco Rubio's control. The playbook said one of the key issues for USAID would be to align U.S. foreign aid to U.S. foreign policy, and that sounds awfully similar to what Secretary Marco Rubio said in El Salvador yesterday.
There are a lot of functions of USAID that are going to continue, that are going to be part of American foreign policy, but it has to be aligned with American foreign policy.
Now, I'm not exactly sure how he's saying that USAID is going to stick around. It just needs to be aligned with our policy, when they are literally trying to unilaterally shut it down right now. USAID is probably one of the most important agencies in our government. It exerts soft power all over the globe and makes America more safe. It buys us goodwill all around the world and keeps Americans more safe. So it is an absolute disaster that they are trying to attack USAID, and then they're spinning up a whole bunch of conspiracies about where all this money is going, trying to say that it's all being funneled off to these leftist organizations and it's getting kickbacks. It's just a whole shit show. It's a game of smoke and mirrors. They are trying to distract you. But the good news is there are people waking up to this. Project 2025 is very, very unpopular with the American people, and we are starting to see a grassroots movement starting to mobilize against this. Not only are they mobilizing against Project 2025, but this whole attack on federal workers, the whole attack on different agencies that might not even be mentioned in Project 2025, but just Trump himself. Trump is a terrible, terrible human. He is now claiming that he wants to take Gaza and own it and develop it like a real estate agent. Absolutely pathetic stuff. But let's go ahead and take a look at these protests that are actually starting to form all around the country as part of this broader movement called the 50-50, I think it's 50501 movement, and that's supposed to be 50 protests in 50 states on one day. I think is how they brand that. But let's go ahead and take a look.
Protesters outside Los Angeles City Hall made it loud and clear that they reject Donald Trump and his rapid-fire efforts to steer American society sharply to the right.
We're here to defend democracy.
There's just a lot of inner corruption, and we don't know where to go to actually fight it. This is a good first step, but we need to move past that even.
Many carried signs denouncing Trump as a fascist. Others waved Mexican flags in solidarity with undocumented persons and banners defending LGBTQ rights. This is part of a grassroots, social media organized series of protests called 50-50 and 1, aiming to create 50 protests in 50 cities in one day. People rallied from Boston, Massachusetts to Austin, Texas, Raleigh, North Carolina, and Indianapolis, Indiana, as well as many more towns, including a protest practically on Trump's own doorstep in Washington, D.C. The protesters here are demonstrating against the Trump administration's planned mass deportation of migrants. They're also protesting the plans to radically reshape the federal government, including gutting entire federal agencies.
So this is very encouraging to see. These protests aren't as big as Donald Trump's first administration, but I think the rage is growing in our society. I think the majority of Americans are not interested in a fascist takeover. They're not interested in a dictatorship. And I think people are really starting to wake up to see that Donald Trump is the authoritarian leader that he was promising to be before he got elected. So I think it is encouraging that we are seeing people stand up and starting to organize. If you can get involved in these movements yourself, I would highly suggest you do so. I think it's also imperative that we be calling our House members, our senators, make sure that you are registering your discontent with them, because it's going to be very important that we push back against this Trump administration, especially now that we know that Project 2025 is coming in hot and heavy, and many of Trump's moves have been taken directly from their 922-page playbook. So that is where we stand for now. We will obviously keep an eye on this, especially since Russell Vought just got confirmed as OMB. And so, I mean, we are in for a long 4 years. Let's go ahead and just pace ourselves. Let's try to build community, build a grassroots movement that can adequately push back against this fascist takeover. So I will leave it there for now. If you guys got anything out of this video, please do remember to smash that like button and subscribe. Maybe share with a friend or two. I'd very much appreciate that. We have to build something here on the left that can adequately push back against the authoritarian takeover that is currently underway. So if you do appreciate the work I do, please do remember to subscribe. If you want to see how Elon Musk is currently trying to raid our treasury with a band of tweens, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on the next one.